Matt, this weekend we have just a weird bucket of muscles of a fight because in an Arrested Development type of way, Matt Brown can whisper sweet nothings into Dheigo Lima's ear and just go, like Buster Bluth.
Oh, hey brother.
Because for Matt Brown, he knocked out Douglas Lima years ago. Now I get it, Yaroslav Amosov just beat Douglas Lima and maybe the stars faded a little bit. Oh wait, Yaroslav Amosov is an absolute undefeated monster of American Top Team. He is the next GOAT at 170 pounds, and I will die on that hill. But all this to say, Douglas Lima's a great fighter. He would have kicked it in the UFC 4 or 5 years ago. He could still have competitive fights against some of the best fighters out there at 170 pounds. Now, for Matt Brown to have that win from years ago, that's great. His overall record now is 22-18. A little bit of salt there. Immortal martial arts. You love to see it. Getting his kids involved. You see that in all the promos. He's a family man. He's 40. And John Anik will probably talk about that if he does call the fights this weekend. But he's taking on a two-time UFC fighter. And I say that because Dheigo Lima was one of those guys that fought with the promotion and then he had to kind of build his way back up. And if you look at it for Dheigo Lima, does he have the sexiest record of 15-8? No. But then you have a look at some of the names that are on there. A loss to Jason Jackson, who just beat Paul Daly last week. Good name. He beat David Machad. He lost to Tim Means, Li Jingliang, Eddie Gordon in the finale of The Ultimate Fighter
Bring
19.
up a win, Craig.
Jesse Taylor on The Ultimate Fighter 2015.
These are all losses.
25. But the wins that he had before his last loss, Chad Laprise knocked him out. That was nice. Split over Court McGee. Split over Luke Jumo, who didn't have a great time in the UFC. And again, a loss to Bilal Muhammad that just had a really big fight against Demian Maia. So for Dheigo Lima, we know out of him. We are a competent striker. He's decent at defensive grappling. He has some weird, tricky submissions that sometimes he gets caught in. Now he's taking on Matt Brown, a guy that is over 40, a little bit long in the tooth. Didn't look spectacular against Carlos Condit his last time out. So this is a tricky fight to try and pick.
If you get rid of the Carlos Condit fight, I would say Matt Brown wins this fight 9 times out of 10. Like, even just based off the Miguel Baeza performance, I'd say, Matt Brown would still win this fight. If you can drop Baeza, you can knock out Dheigo Lima. Like, it's not impossible to knock Dheigo Lima out. He doesn't have a great chin himself, and that's why this is an interesting fight, because if Matt Brown has suffered in any department, his durability has faded as his career's progressed. Like, you bring up the salty record, and I think you would have to admit, his record is salty because with Matt Brown, when you're fighting the best guys for as long as Matt Brown has, like, you're gonna win and lose some fights. When you're only really in there with top 15 and borderline top 15 guys, your record won't look good after 15 years in the UFC.
So 2010, Ricardo Almeida, Chris Lytle, Brian Foster, then Seth Bashinsky, and those are losses. Then after that,
Goes on a 7-fight finish streak.
2014, he loses to Robbie Lawler, Johnny Hendricks, beats Tim Means, loses to Demian Maia, loses to Ellenberger, loses to Donald Cerrone 2016, and that was a crazy fight. So yeah, Matt Brown's fought some good guys.
And Matt Brown is one of those fighters who we talked about it with Tim Means a little bit earlier. I look at Matt Brown as he's basically exactly what Tim Means is going to be when Tim Means gets to that age. Like, he's Tim Means.
3 more years.
But there's a lot more wear on Matt Brown at this stage of his career than Means at his. Like, with Means, I'm still confident he can eat clean shots from his opponent. With Brown, I do worry a little bit. Like, it's gotten to the point now where when he does eat clean shots, it does at least hurt him. And with Baeza, yes, offensively, you can still see, like, Matt Brown is a force to be reckoned with. When he's moving forward, when he's landing punches, throwing his kicks, landing elbows especially, like, he's still a very dangerous fighter, and he can still offer prospects really hard fights. And that's kind of how I look at Matt Brown at this stage of his career. He's perfect for guys like Miguel Baeza. Like, I know I bring up the Baeza fight a lot to the point where Craig rolls his eyes, but I look at that fight as the best thing that's ever happened to Miguel Baeza. Like, you fought a legend, you had a hard fight, you struggled, but then you got through, and then you beat him. Like, that's the best thing. If you face adversity and get through it, especially when you're a prospect, against a veteran, like, that's all you ever want from your prospects. The fight against Condit was a little bit concerning, though, because we didn't see Matt Brown get outstruck. We didn't see his chin fade. We saw him get out grappled against Carlos Condit. The guy who gets out grappled by pretty much anybody. And listen, Carlos Condit's looked better in his last 2 performances. You gotta bring big shouts to Condit against Court McGee. He looked really good. And then again against Matt Brown. But I just don't think we're seeing the Matt Brown that we were seeing even back in 2017 and 19 when he beat guys like Diego Sanchez and Ben Saunders. Like, if you want to put Matt Brown in some of those legends fights, I'm fine with him fighting the Carlos Condits of the world. I'm fine with him fighting the Ben Saunders of the world, but him against Dheigo Lima, like, if Lima's on kind of a run, which he sort of is, I guess, if you want to call it, like, his only recent loss is to Bilal Muhammad. There's no real shame in that. Muhammad himself is the top 10 guy, so it's kind of weird that they're sort of trying to build the name of Dheigo Lima off of Matt Brown, because for me, this is a fun fight, but it's a dangerous fight for Dheigo Lima, because I've seen him get hit, and I've seen him get cracked by guys who don't hit nearly as hard as Matt Brown. The one thing I will mention, though, is this fight to me has shades of Dheigo Lima versus Chad Laprise. And listen, Chad Laprise isn't nearly as big as Matt Brown is at 170.
No, he's a 55er moving up.
Exactly. And Matt Brown is a much better pure striker than Chad Laprise is, but they are two, I would say, chinnier guys who are susceptible to the knockout, especially at 170. And when you look at Dheigo Lima, his record's kind of deceiving because he doesn't have very many knockout wins, but it's a guy who, if he lands clean, he can put you down. And at this stage of Matt Brown's career, listen, I've said it a lot of times, like, I love Matt Brown way more than I should. I'm probably the Matt Brown expert in the internet's prediction channels, and I'm fine with having that moniker, but at this stage of his career, I don't think Matt Brown can beat a guy like Dheigo Lima. And it's not to say that Dheigo Lima's really impressed me as of late. You're bringing up a lot of split decision wins over fighters who, quite frankly, you expect Dheigo Lima to beat. But in the fight against Bilal Muhammad, he should be at least enough that he could beat Matt Brown. He defended enough takedowns. He was able to be at least good enough defensively with some of his striking defense to where he didn't get put down. Because Bilal Muhammad landed 100 strikes on Dheigo Lima.
He's got rocks standing up.
Exactly, but at least didn't go down from it. And against a guy like Bilal Muhammad, it's not like Matt Brown would have a competitive fight with him either. And I do think Dheigo Lima at least has more tread on the tires than Matt Brown at this stage of his career, and I really think that's what this fight comes in.
The weird thing overall career-wise, Dheigo Lima has a negative strike differential. Matt Brown has a nice positive differential by about 1 given to 1 taken. So it is interesting that way. Dheigo Lima's almost 1 taken to 1 given. If we have a look at the odds for this one, Lima open to minus 185. He's minus 173 average on best fight odds. For Matt Brown, open to plus 160. He's a plus 142. Over on Tapology, 824 total votes. 80% Lima, 74% by decision. For the 20% that have Brown, 48% by decision, 45% by knockout. Both of these guys, again, statistically finished fights, or are in fights that finish. 9 minutes and 14 seconds, the average fight time for Matt Brown. 8 minutes and 43 for Lima. Big enough sample size. Again, Matt Brown's been around forever. Lima with the 2 stints. Both seasons of The Ultimate Fighter. Losing in the finals in both. Once to Jesse Taylor, one to Truck Gordon. But yeah, Matt, I've got Dheigo Lima ever so slightly, but if you can make a compelling case, you let me know down below in the comments section if you like Matt Brown.
So I do have Dheigo Lima, but I can honestly see this being a parlay buster of a fight. Like, I could see Matt Brown landing a big elbow in the clinch and putting Dheigo Lima down. We've seen Lima get rocked enough throughout his career that I do believe, listen, if Matt Brown lands a clean shot, there crazier things have happened than Dheigo Lima getting knocked out by Matt Brown. But no, I do agree with you. At the end of the day, I think Lima will avenge his brother's loss.
Matt, both of us going with brother Dhiego to get the win. Big time fights on this card. Aleksa Oleinik taking on one tough guy in Sergey Spivac. And then in our main event, we have the Korean Zombie taking on Daniga. You're not going to want to miss it. Keep it locked in with Fight Night picks. And as we always say, let's get into it.